From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every day is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the Jr. is very important to remember the JR. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And if you are watching us on the Gulf Coast Sports Entertainment Network, thank you. Hello. Glad to have you with us here on the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. Andre Johnson Jr., we've got something we haven't had in 55 days, my friend.
That's a long time.
That is a Victory Monday. Your New Orleans Saints, walking wounded, new coach, 2-7, 7-game losing streak, faced their hated rival, and wouldn't you know it, they come out with a victory, 20-17. It was hard fought, it was dramatic, but most importantly, it was well earned. The Saints deserved every bit of that victory against the Falcons. And I just got to tell you, just from a psychological standpoint, losing sucks because it's just, it's not like basketball. We got a game in 2 days. In football, you got to wait a whole week, and that can really wear on you psychologically. And there were many moments, and we're going to talk about it, where it felt like it could go either way. So to come out with the win and just have that wake up on a Monday morning feeling of victory again, you kind of appreciate it a little more now because it's been a long time since they had one. So how you feeling today?
I feel good, and we were both in the Dome yesterday. Mm-hmm. The Dome is obviously one of the best places to play in the NFL. But yesterday, that Dome was special.
It was. It's like they felt the situation on hand. I was concerned about that going in because, man, like I said, it's hard. I can't tell you how many people that I know that are diehard Saints fans that have told me they were done. Yeah. They were done. But, you make the move. Hopefully it injects some life into the program, into the organization. And frankly, you all saw it. I think it did. Darren Rizzi is in as the interim coach, steps up his first game, gets us the victory. So I think that's what we're going to go with the big picture today.
Yeah, Darren Rizzi stepping in, and it was interesting, we're in the Dome, and we hear the applause and the ovations at the beginning when the players and the coaches are announced. That was the first time I've heard such a loud ovation for a coach. Alvin Kamara, who wound up breaking the Saints' all-time rushing record, had the loudest. And right after AK was probably Darren Rizzi when he was announced pregame, and that energy carried out throughout the entire course of that football game. So when you look back at it and the Saints picking up that win, you got to ask, how big was the Rizzi factor against the Atlanta Falcons?
All right, well, let me be the first one to wish you all a Merry, Merry Rizmas. That's the new phrase going around New Orleans right now. Holiday season is here. So how real was the Rizzi factor? Just watch the game. Of course it was real. Of course it was real. Of course it was a big deal. Everyone in black and gold was flying around all game. Rizzi himself, extremely active on the sideline. He promised passion. He promised energy. That was everywhere. I was everywhere Sunday. Energy, passion, want to buy in. It was so abundantly clear from the body language. Jeff Hager, our photographer, shot some sideline work during the game, just as the game's progressing, and he's got the shot of Demario Davis. I don't know if it was yelling, but it was intense discussion on the sideline with Alontae Taylor, who got popped for a couple of pass interference and defensive holding penalties. The buy-in was there. It was there. They were in a not today type mood. But what I want to focus on is how they responded to the multiple instances where this game, frankly, could have gone sideways. And it was at multiple opportunities. There were several examples. But where it felt like, really, this is how it's going to go? Really? They tried hard, but even with the coaching switch, it's still going to result in the same way. I'm going to focus on three. Where you could have gotten to that thinking. You could have drifted into that part. And frankly, that thinking has seeped into the organization up until Sunday. They aren't all that hard to remember. They came on the first and the last offensive drives of the game. Example one, very first offensive play of the game. Yep. Very first offensive play of the game. Bootleg play to Taysom Hill. Throws a little short pass. Derek Carr. He catches it, turns it up. 88 yards later, he's in the end zone. I had the Taysom Falcon killer tweet ready to go, about to hit send. Then came the flag. Foster Moreau popped for holding downfield. Close call for sure, but it's the kind of call losing teams get in those types of situations in moments like that. But drive didn't go south. Drive did not go south. Next play, Alvin Kamara ran for 11. Next play after that, he ran for 6 and broke Mark Ingram's record. They got all the way down inside the 10, and then they faced a 4th and 2, which brings me to example number 2. Of course they were going to go for it. Of course they were going to go for it. And I'll just say, probably would have been a field goal attempt last week in Carolina had they got to that point and just want to get points. But anyway, be bold, Rizzy. He promised that they were going to be bold. They were going to be aggressive. They were going to be smart, but they were going to be bold. So who did they turn to? Well, who else? Number 7, Taysom Hill again. QB power. You know it. I know it. They had no receivers on the field. It was tight ends and running back and Taysom Hill. It's QB power. It doesn't matter if he's going left or is he going right. The Falcons do it. It always works, right? Not this time. The Falcons stepped up and they stopped. They only got 1 when they needed 2. 13-play drive, all for naught. Again, thinking could have pivoted that way early in the game. If you're in that mindset early in the game, that's a problem. But how did the defense respond? They forced a 3-and-out, a quick 3-and-out with field position. Got the ball back. Saints respond with a field goal on the next drive. And finally, example number 3. You know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
You know where I'm going with this. If I said first and last drive and the first 2 examples from the first drive, well, guess what? Process of elimination tells you I'm going to the last drive. Should have been the perfect. That dome would have exploded. Should have been the perfect walk-off for Alvin Kamara. 4th quarter, 3rd down. Tyron just got the interception. Under 2 minutes left. Beautiful call. Beautiful route. Beautiful throw. Oh, are you kidding me? Terrible, terrible drop. Giving Kirk Cousins the ball back with just enough time to get everyone happy, just to rip the Saints' hearts and their fans right out of their chest yet again. Tyrann Mathieu even said, you were there, Tyrann Mathieu even said after the game, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that was a situation they probably would not have been able to overcome. But not this Sunday. This Sunday, they were ready. They were ready.
They were Rizzy.
They were Rizzy. They were ready. They were Rizzy ready. They weren't about to be robbed. Again, Sunday, they all went right back to what Darren Rizzi told them before the game. Something bad is going to happen in this game. How do you respond? Falcons, get the ball all the way to midfield with 41 seconds left. Then out of nowhere, the player you Saints fans have been waiting and waiting. You've heard us talk about this player all training camp, waiting and begging for him to do something in a big moment. Well, he finally does. Chase Young sacks Cousins, forces the fumble. Falcons recover. Ball goes way back. They get a little bit of the yardage back. Then on 4th down, Cousins inexplicably loses track of time, throws it short of the sticks on 4th down. Game over. Now just ask yourself, do they win that game the way that game went with the coach? The players weren't all the way behind, weren't all the way bought in on?
Not a chance.
I'm still a little shocked at how happy the locker room was all week. I'm telling you, big old smiles on their faces. I talked to 5 players directly. Only one had any shred of regret about the situation. Not even Derek Carr. Only one had any shred of regret. That player was Tyrann Mathieu about the way things are going. He even said, I haven't felt like Tyrann. Should tell you something. So, how big was the Rizzy factor? Frankly, I think it was the difference in the game. I think the Rizzy factor was the difference in the game. And I want to emphasize this game. Difference in this game, because they aren't all going to go this way. You aren't always going to get the energy and the passion. You aren't always going to get the interim bump. But the interim bump was real. And maybe it lasts another week. Maybe it lasts another couple of weeks. But eventually, the newness of the situation wears off. And energy and passion must marry with proper execution. They were okay execution-wise. They were better. They weren't perfect or flawless. But at least for one day, on this Victory Monday, the Saints can enjoy breaking out of that horrible funk against their most hated rival and improving to 3-7.
Sunday, when I look at Sunday as a whole, To me, it is what happens when you cut the excuses and you go out and ball. All the excuses that Dennis Allen was making, all the excuses that the general manager, Mickey Loomis, was making, all of the things they were saying, they were still present on the field on Sunday. All the reasons that the Saints are 2-7, right, or were 2-7 going into that game, they were present. You didn't have your number 1 or number 2 receiver. Chris Olave out with a concussion. Rashid Shaheed, he is out as well. Are we going to make excuses about it? Are we going to keep saying next man up? Or are we going to showcase next man up? Because we hear them say next man up every week.
Talk to him.
We finally saw it on Sunday. No Olave. No Shaheed. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, welcome to New Orleans. We saw him step right into that Rashid Shaheed role. 2 big catches, 2 big touchdowns, 3 catches overall for it was 109 yards. One of the best plays of the season. That first deep pass by Derek Carr, there were 3 defenders there. Yeah. Like, they're darn near triple coverage. Perfect pass to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Just giving that explosiveness back to the Saints offense that the country was so enamored in the first 2 weeks when the Saints were 2-0. It's because they were doing things like that. And once again, you don't have Olave. You don't have Shaheed. It's very easy to say, well, we don't have our 2 biggest receivers, our 2 fastest receivers. How can we have a deep threat? How can we stretch the field? How can we get those safeties to take 3 steps back and stop crowding the box on Alvin Kamara? You stop making excuses. You sign Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and you send him deep, and you let Derek Carr do what he does best. He has been on the money with those deep passes all season. You go to the defensive side of the ball. You've got people going on defense. You lost Pete Werner for a stretch of that game with a hand injury. Marshawn Lattimore just got traded, arguably your best defensive player. Paulson Adebo on IR. Kool-Aid McKinstry did not play on Sunday. Ugo Amadi steps in, a special teams guy for the most part. 3 tackles for losses.
And they got some skill players over there now. They got some skill. In Atlanta, I'm talking about.
Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Tulane's guy, Darnell Mooney. That's not a weak offense by any means, but the defense stepped up and held Atlanta to 17 points on the day, despite everything that you lost. What's been the biggest one all season? Offensive line. You lost Taliese Fuaga for a small stretch of that game. He got injured early in the game. Lucas Patrick did not play on Sunday. You still don't have Eric McCoy back. And the Saints' offensive line was spectacular. They play on turf, but if they were playing in grass, Derek Carr probably would have went home with a pretty clean jersey. No grass stains or anything on it because the offensive line was spectacular on Sunday. So all of the excuses that the team has been making, oh, we have injuries here, we have defensive guys out here, we have offensive guys out here, you still had it on Sunday. And despite all of that, when you believe in the message that's being preached to you, when you believe in the man that's preaching that message, when you believe in the Rizzy revival, you see a new energy and you see a new passion that you saw in that dome. And that energy and passion wasn't just on the field. It was on the sidelines. It was in the stands. I mean, you look around the NFL, you're not going to find many 2-7 teams that have a home field with the kind of energy that the Saints showed on Sunday. Because let's be honest about it, we were in the Dome last season. We've been in the Dome earlier this season. The Dome is one of the best places to play in the NFL, but that Dome gets a little dead sometimes.
It can get stale, very stale.
When the Saints don't give you any reason to cheer, and the Saints haven't given their fans much reason to cheer over the last 2 months. But that Dome was incredible. You got a quick glimpse of this team that was 2-0 and lighting the league on fire in the first 2 weeks. And I think a lot of that has to do with Darren Rizzi. A new voice, a new message, a new energy, a new passion, and finally a new result for a Saints team that had been losing for almost 2 months straight.
That's it. That's it. And look, like we said, the interim bump is real. It's a matter of how can you maintain that level? Because look, Rizzy was up.
Oh, yeah.
He was. There's going to be a point where he's just not going to be able to be that all gas all game for multiple week stretch. But in the short term, Yeah, it's real. The energy bump is real. I could see them coming out and playing very, 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 very well next week against Cleveland. Bye week hits. We'll see. At that point, things would have kind of settled down a little bit. Maybe it's the same thing, but look, worry about that when you get to when you're 2-7 going into a game and you got your biggest rival who will want nothing more than to rip your heart out and just dance on your grave the way you would do to them.
Yep.
And you step up and play. And it's something else, too. I don't think Atlanta had the proper focus that they should have had. And they weren't quite. I think they probably had an idea that they would get a little revival with the Saints and the new coach. But, when you have that new buy-in, that new focus, that new energy, and all of a sudden you're starting to see the Falcons make the mistake. You see Drake London bobbling a ball where he was wide open in the opening drive of the game. You see Younghoe Koo miss 3 field goals. You see Ridgeway block one of them. You see Kirk Cousins just lose. When you watching it, I was like, what is he doing? Like, he's going the pre-snap thing. I'm thinking,
so confused.
I thought they would have at least, because he hit a 58-yarder against the Saints in week 1. I thought maybe... Well, it was 4th down, so they couldn't spike it. So I was like, well, get to the sticks or something. It was a weird circumstance because even if they catch the ball and they get the first down, I'm not sure they had enough time on the clock to kick the field goal. So it was just good to see the energy harnessed in the correct way. And there's just, football is a funny game. All of a sudden, across the sideline with the team making the stupid mistakes. And the Saints had a few mistakes. They had a few lack of execution. They had a few lapses in concentration. But by far and away, they outplayed the Falcons. They out-executed the Falcons, and they 100% deserved the win. They 100%, I won't say 100%, but they outplayed Atlanta in week 4, and the reverse happened. So you don't have to really look too far to see what the difference was. And look, I don't know how it's going to pan out with Rizzy, and I don't know how hard he's going to be able to maintain this throughout the duration of his stretch as interim head coach. But it's a good start. And look, you take it. You take it. I mean, look, it's been I've been in that locker room. It's been, you get upset, then you get mad, then you get depressed when you keep losing. Then you just kind of check out mentally. When it's like, oh, here we go again. I guess I got to do another ugly Monday. Well, you finally, and it's hard to break through. Well, they finally broke through, and let's just hope it's not just a one-week thing because, look, I know some of y'all are shooting for them to lose and lose the rest of their games. They're not checking out on the season. Darren Rizzi, this might be his only opportunity he ever gets to be a head coach in the NFL. You think he's not going to, turn every stone, look under every rock to make sure he has the opportunity to give this team the best chance to win? Because that gives his own head coaching future or own head coaching sort of dreams a shot of life that he obviously wants, which brings us into our next phase here. Y'all got some questions for us because the Final Word feature was blowing up with questions about this game, so we're going to hit a few of those up right now.
Right, and to send your questions in, by the way, go download the Final Play app in your app store. Go to the Final Word feature, put your name, put where you live, send a question in. We look at them every single day. We'll answer them on the podcast. We've got Black and Gold Review with Deuce McAllister every Monday night. Mm-hmm. We'll answer them on that show as well. So send those questions in. And this one, kind of a twofer. 2 people asked the same question for the most part, so I'm going to say them both. Chuck, though, from Ponchatoula, and Brandon from Laplace. Chuck asking, what are the odds of Rizzy being named permanent head coach? Brandon asking, what win-loss record does Coach Rizzy have to attain to make a case to remain Saints head coach beyond this season?
All right, I'm going to detach myself from what we all just watched Sunday because I was feeling it too. It felt awesome. It felt great. But, as it customarily does, win or lose in the NFL, you get to this point, you're still kind of riding high. But by Tuesday, you turn the page. So, obviously, the higher amount of wins he has, the higher the percentage he gets or he has, or the higher odds he has to possibly get that job. Now, what we don't know is does Mrs. Benson and Mickey Loomis, provided Mickey Loomis is the guy making the call, you know how we felt about that. Do they already have it in their head that they're going to just go with a completely different approach and just wipe the slate clean regardless of what Rizzy does? There's certainly some merit to that thinking because, look, if interim coaches, were the type to have all kinds of success, then you'd see a lot more head coach firings in the middle of the season. That just historically, interims, they come in, they get that bump, and then generally speaking, that energy wears off. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. Ironically, Derek Carr's interim coach, Bisaccia, was, I think, the last interim to lead a team to the playoffs, and they got to the playoffs that year with Derek Carr. They lost to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. So the higher the win total, the higher the chance, the louder the cries will come, the louder the pleas will come from the players to keep him on as permanent head coach. Now, we saw up in Baton Rouge at Orgeron, that's not the smoothest transition, but it can be done, and you can reach heights. You know, at Orgeron, that first year as head coach full-time, you saw the difference between interim Ed and full-time Ed. It's a little different, but he still was able to rally and win a Super Bowl or win a national championship. So to me, I would say the line is 6 wins. If they run the table, I don't see how you could turn to anybody else, which I guess is possible, especially when you look at the schedule. But, man, there was some times last game, even with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but there was no one to throw the ball to. It was they were covered, some of the guys that were throwing to. I told Deuce before the game, get your card ready for the wide receivers because there was so many new faces. So I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that consistently week in and week out. There's a chance, but you never know. So to me, if he goes 6-2, which ironically I think was Ed Orgeron's record when he got the job for the interim year. He goes 6-2 or better. I think you're talking about a very strong case for Rizzy. If they battle and they show heart and they go 4-4, I think you certainly commend him for his service, and maybe that helps him in the head coaching interview circuit elsewhere. But I think that would probably it's probably time to just turn everything over on the coaching staff and look elsewhere. 5-3 is going to be an interesting one. Anything below that, obviously, I think it's going to be, hey, nice effort, great job. You salvaged the season, but we're going to go in a different direction. So it's not impossible, but history has shown it's very hard for an interim to keep the head coaching job. We'll just see how the team reacts as the weeks go on. Because remember, by the time we get to December, the DA firing will have been well behind us. So it's going to be a pretty regular, okay, Rizzy's the guy. So at some point, it's not like he's got a very tight window. He's got half the season to work here. So I think there's a chance, but I think 6-2 is the line.
That's the record that I pinpointed as well, 6-2 for Darren Rizzi to most likely keep this job. But I'll put an asterisk next to that because I'm looking at the NFC South as a whole. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the standings. Right now, Atlanta in first place at 6-4. Tampa, second place at 4-6. The Saints and Panthers are both 3-7. As bad as this season is, with about half the season in front of you, you are 3 games back from the top of the NFC South. You now split with Atlanta. So Atlanta, when it comes to tiebreakers, Atlanta won't necessarily own that far and away tiebreaker over you because they swept you. You have an opportunity to split with Tampa because you closed the season against Tampa. You've already split against Carolina. I say all that to say the NFC South can get very interesting.
Yeah.
As bad as the Saints have been, as bad as that 7-game losing streak was, if Rizzy can finish 5-3, 6-2, there's a chance he could win the NFC South. And when you look at this Saints team,
that would have been crazy to think last week.
Exactly. In the depths of the NFL standings, I think they were the 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft at the start of last week. If somehow, some way, Darren Rizzi is able to make a run and get this team into the playoffs, even in a bad NFC South, I don't know how you necessarily take that job away from him.
Yeah.
So those would be my 2 things to say. Maybe we should keep Rizzi 6-2 record, or Rizzi finds a way to win the NFC South and make the playoffs, because the wild card picture, you got a lot of good NFC teams with a lot of good records. I don't think you're getting in with the wild card.
Yeah.
You'd have to win the South.
Well, look, they would have to go on an amazing run. And if they ever got to that discussion, NFC South, they would have gone on the run that they've needed to go on, which I think would obviously turn the tide and turn the energy and just turn the momentum in his favor. Now, it's also important to point out, just because, look, he could be the front runner if that would have happened, which I still look, guys. I'm looking at history here, so it's more likely that it doesn't happen than it does. But if it does happen, they would still have to go through the formal hiring process of operating within the Rooney Rule, getting all the qualified candidates in to do the formal interview request. So it would still be quite some time before they would, after the season, name Rizzi the head coach. It's a shame you couldn't just give him the job based off of past performance, but the rules are set up in a way, and I understand that. So I think that it's obviously a good thing to kind of almost force the organization's hand to see everything and see everyone and give yourself the best look at the potential candidates. But in that situation, they would still have to interview most of go through probably interview candidates, probably 6 or 7 more candidates. Yeah. They're on the line for that over the next couple of months here. What else we have?
We have a question from Dewana Allen from Bell Chase. Why does it seem the Saints offense can't adjust after halftime? Mm-hmm. On Sunday, a great first half by their offense with 17 points. Second half, it felt like the offense was sleepwalking. It's almost like the offensive coordinator couldn't get the offense to move the ball in the second half, where they only scored 3 points against the Falcons.
Yeah, and I think they closed out with like 4 straight 3-and-outs. This is a fair question. This is something I've been critical of Clint Kubiak of, is when they get the initial game plan works and then the team adjusts, you don't have that counterpunch ready. I do think a little bit of matchup personnel-wise played into that a little bit. They don't have any firepower on the edge, but it's still no excuse. You're Clint Kubiak. You're going to punch someone. They're going to punch back. You got to have the counter punch. You got to be able to adjust off of defensive adjustments, because if it were just your game plan working the entire time, there would be no need for in-game adjustments. So I do think Kubiak has got to get better at that. And that was one of those things where you could almost feel it slipping away, because there was a stretch where offensively they just could not find the rhythm that they had in the first half.
Yep, and for me, it comes down to what is the heart of this Kubiak offense, and that's running the ball.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara's yards and carries were both down in the second half, and we've seen throughout this season, if you can't run the ball in that Clint Kubiak offense, you're probably not putting points on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw in the second half. Now, obviously, they did have a chance at the end with the Alvin Kamara touchdown that was dropped. But on a positive note, it comes down to, this is what Darren Rizzi said in his opening press conference when he made that LeBron and J.R. Smith analogy. Sometimes one person's got to pick up another.
Yeah.
If the offense is struggling in the second half, the defense stepped up and they did what they had to do, and they held the Falcons, and you got that win.
Yes, it was a total team effort. Not every phase had it contributed. Every phase contributed to some issues, but all in all, they got the win. That's a perfect way for us to send it off, because we are out of time. For Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We will catch you guys next time on Overtime.